Theodore Parker was a Unitarian, a transcendentalist, a writer, a philosopher, a resistor, a reformer, and he is not particularly well known today. His life lasted just 50 years, from 1810 to 1860, and was marked by controversy as he moved from being a devout Christian Unitarian to something else, something more progressive that lost him his standing among the Boston Unitarians, where he lived and worked. Parker was complicated. He was at once an avid abolitionist who helped fund John Brown and who opposed vehemently the Fugitive Slave Act of 1850. And also he averred the progressive supremacy of Anglo-Saxons. He was against the oppression of women and for the realization of a democracy that valued people not for their wealth and influence, but for who they were and what they achieved. In the last 15 years of his life, Parker preached regularly on Sunday mornings to thousands in halls in Boston that were rented so that his followers could hear him once he'd lost his parish. He preached abolition, freedom, democracy, morality, and many of his words have filtered down to us, as some of you may know. It was Parker who said, quote, "I do not pretend to understand the moral universe. The arc is a long one. My eye reaches but little ways. I cannot calculate the curve and complete the figure by experience of sight. I can divine it by conscience. And from what I see, I am sure it bends toward justice." Those are words we hear echoed in the words of Martin Luther King Jr. And it was Parker who said, democracy is a government of all the people, by all the people, for all the people. Words we hear echoed in the words of Abraham Lincoln. And Parker is credited also as saying, democracy means not I am as good as you are, but you are as good as I am. Words that cut to the heart of his understanding of what democracy must look like and what spirit it must be grounded in. Today, we continue our consideration of democracy in this nation, aware that from its inception, the ideals have not been fulfilled, and that with each generation, we must be vigilant, must re-inspire, must rework, must reinvigorate the notion of democracy, making it our own responsibility over and over again to make America anew over and over again, doing our best to reach the ideals set forth so long ago, doing our best in spite of our flawed human history and flawed human present. I want to offer some special gratitude this morning to the Wider World Circle and all those who worked tirelessly to create a variety of experiences for all of us this social justice weekend that has focused on democracy. American democracy is never assured. Today, we reaffirm our commitment to the ideals of our nation, and we talk about how we can achieve them. Please rise in body or spirit to join in singing our hymn. It's This Old World, 315 if you happen to have a hymnal, and the words will be projected.
I sing a line and you repeat, okay? This old world is full of sorrow. Let's try. This old world is full of sorrow. Me? Full of sickness, weak and sore. You? Full of sickness, weak and sore. If you love our neighbor truly, if you love your neighbor truly, love will come to you the more. Love will come to you the more. 1, 2, 1 and 2. This old world is full of sorrow, full of sickness, weak and sore. If you love your own and truly, love will come to you the more. We're all children. be a garden full of fragrance, full of grace. If we love our neighbors truly, we must meet them face to face. It is said, now love the neighbor, and we know well that is true. This the sum of human labor, true for me as again. This the sum of human labor, true for me as well as you.
Our reading today is The Idea of Democracy, or is from The Idea of Democracy by President Abraham Lincoln. As labor is the common burden of our race, so the effort of some to shift their share of the burden onto the shoulders of others is the great durable curse of the race. As I would not be a slave, so I would not be a master. This expresses my idea of democracy. Whatever differs from this, to the extent of the difference, is no democracy. Our reliance is in our love for liberty. Our defense is in the spirit which prizes liberty as the heritage of all people in all lands everywhere. Destroy this spirit, and we have planted the seeds of despotism at our own doors. Those who deny freedom to others deserve it not for themselves and cannot long retain it. Why should there not be a patient confidence in the ultimate justice of the people? Is there any better or equal hope in the world? Let us have faith that right makes might, and in that faith, let us, to the end, dare to our duty, and as we understand it.
So tomorrow, the Jewish holiday of Purim begins. Purim celebrates the events retold in the book of Esther. A part of the Hebrew scriptures, Esther tells a story that's actually basically devoid of God. The super short version is that the king Ahasuerus becomes displeased with his queen and seeks out a new one. After meeting a whole bunch of women, he chooses Esther, who is a Jew, although the king does not know this. Esther hides her Judaism because loads of folks back then didn't like the Jews, including the king's advisor Haman. Haman tries to get Esther's uncle Mordecai in trouble. Haman declares that he wants to eliminate the Jews. And Mordecai tells Esther that she has to do something as the queen to save her people. Esther throws a couple of parties, and I'm giving you like truly the shortest of short versions. Just go ahead and read Esther. It's not even that long. But she throws a couple of parties, and at the first, Mordecai has the chance to win the king's favor. And at the second, Esther comes out as Jewish to her husband and tells him that Haman has this plot to destroy her people. She takes this risk, acts with audacity given her status as woman and as a Jew, and she succeeds. Once she makes this confession, the king has Haman punished. And then towards the end of the story, the Jews are given the chance to eliminate Haman and other folks who are a threat to their survival. The holiday is a joyful one with costumes and parties and general merriment. And it marks a moment of survival, that involves trickery, but also honesty and a lot of joy. What's especially interesting about Purim is that God isn't in the story. And until the end, when the king enables the killing of Haman and company, it also isn't a story of violent resistance. Many of the other holidays and tales in Judaism involve God's wrath in defense of the Jewish people, or involve the Jewish people physically fighting for their survival against all odds. Esther, on the other hand, is a story of one woman using her wits, her love, and her honesty to save an entire people. At first, Esther hides who she is, but when push comes to shove, she takes the risk needed to save her people, even at potential harm to herself. It's a story about standing up and using words and tools other than violence. Our country has a long history of ideals and failures and complicated heroes. I shared with you about Theodore Parker earlier, but he is one among many, many of whom were much more well-known: Jefferson, Washington, Hamilton, so many men whose lofty language set the stage for the possibilities of this country, but whose personal behavior fell well short, or whose limited vision of humanity led them right into immorality. This country began as a great experiment in democracy. Yes, there had been democracies before, but America took the notion further, pushing what was understood by that term democracy. This is the land of government, of the people, by the people, for the people. And if Parker had had his way, government of all the people, by all the people, for all the people. Now, of course, we know that America at its inception was flawed. Women, enslaved peoples, indigenous peoples were seen and treated as less than human. And it has taken centuries to make the progress we have on those fronts. Even now, we don't truly possess what one might see as pure democracy. Gerrymandering, voter suppression, the nature of the Senate and of the Electoral College, all of these mean that even our representative democracy, representational democracy, is challenged at best. There are many who would say that democracy is on the decline and the threat of tyranny or oligarchy is stronger than it ever has been. There are days when I feel that level of despair. And yet, in spite of those threats and in spite of our worries, power transferred after the last election. In spite of everything, the January 6th insurrectionists and traitors are being prosecuted. In spite of the threats we can recognize, we continue to forge ahead with the work of this nation, with voting and planning and trying over and over to make good on the promise of the original American ideals. And this is because there are people who will stand up and continue to have faith in the democratic system. This is because, really, collectively, we refuse to give up or give in. Democracy in this country is an ideal, but it's also a lived reality in progress. And we have to continue to commit ourselves daily to making it more and more and more real. There's a perhaps apocryphal story that as the Constitutional Convention wrapped up, a young socialite who'd been hanging around trying to see what was going on asked Benjamin Franklin what sort of government the men had arrived at in the room. And as the story goes, he said to her, "A republic, ma'am, if you can keep it." This has always been the challenge. Can we keep it? Since America's beginning, there have been many other democracies born, from revolution, from political interference, from the dissolution of empires. We can look at those who have pursued the work of democracy in the wake of the American experiment to learn some things. During the height of the Soviet Union's control of Eastern Europe, then Czechoslovakia was one of many parts of the world where democratic participation was being squashed. One of the dissidents there was a playwright named Václav Havel. Unlike the American revolutionaries, Havel did not have an army to battle his oppressors. There weren't that many dissidents, and Soviet power was at that time deeply entrenched. What he did have was his intellect, his wit, and his voice. He applied those and wrote, among other things, a powerful essay called Power of the Powerless. In it, he meditated on how those of us who want democratic principles to prevail can impact the world around us, even if we lack the power of position or armament or wealth. Now, he was writing in the context of a totalitarian regime, but the insight he came to will, I think, resonate with all of us. He tells a story of a greengrocer who, like everyone under communist rule, must put a sign with a Marxist slogan up in the window. Doesn't matter what the slogan is, but Havel tells us the important thing is that by hanging the sign, the greengrocer is saying, I am complying. I'm complying with what I'm supposed to do. And every shop window has the slogan up, so everyone is participating in upholding the view of the world that the regime puts forward. Because it's everywhere, because it's so expected, the sign becomes almost invisible. And yet Havel understood it to be this important foundation of the regime because it signals the compliance of the people regardless of their actual beliefs. And it entangles the people, it enmeshes them in the lies that the regime needs to perpetuate to survive. And so Havel concludes the power in the hands of the supposedly powerless is to withdraw that seemingly small act of compliance. Seemingly small, because in fact, it's much more powerful than we see at first blush. Václav Havel writes, let us now imagine that one day something in our greengrocer snaps and he stops putting up the slogans merely to ingratiate himself. He begins to say what he really thinks at political meetings, and he even finds the strength in himself to express solidarity with those whom his conscience commands him to support. In this revolt, the greengrocer steps out of living within the lie. He rejects the ritual and breaks the rules of the game. He discovers once more his suppressed identity and dignity. He gives his freedom a concrete significance. His revolt is an attempt to live within the truth. By breaking the rules of the game, he has disrupted the game as such. He has exposed it as a mere game. He has shattered the world of appearances, the fundamental pillar of the system. He has upset the power structure by tearing apart what holds it together. He has demonstrated that living a lie is living a lie. He has broken through the exalted facade of the system and exposed the real base foundations of power. He has said that the emperor is naked, and because the emperor is in fact naked, something extremely dangerous has happened. By his action, the greengrocer has addressed the world. He has enabled everyone to peer behind the curtain. He has shown everyone that it is possible to live within the truth. It's possible to live within the truth. Havel's greengrocer is taking a stand for truth against lies and coercion, and truth is where power lies. And that's no less true today than it was in that time and place. At times, surely, power has been a struggle for physical force, and at times it still is to this day. And yet we also know and we see that there is a struggle to own truth, and that daily people are attempting to create truth out of whole cloth. Even though Václav Havel was writing in response to a different political moment, our call to support democracy is the same. To reject and expose lies, to refuse to comply with tyranny and oppression, and to live in truth and tell that to the world. Our own truths and our shared truths, however complex they may be. Václav Havel turned out to be right in a very real way. The Soviet Union turned out to be more fragile than anyone realized. And once that reality was exposed, it pretty quickly crumbled. Havel became the first president of the post-Soviet Czechoslovakia through what was called the Velvet Revolution. Called that because there were no shots fired, no dead in the streets, only a sudden realization of the truth and a promotion of that truth that overtook all the lies. And it took only 12 days. 12 days of risking telling the truth and resisting oppression and standing up in spite of the possibility of danger. We tell stories of revolutions and resistance. We also have stories like this, stories of wit and truth-telling and salvation. Democracy in this American form we live with today was an absolutely audacious idea. That government be of and for and by the people. It broke with so much tradition and set forth ideals and possibilities that have resounded across the entire globe for centuries. The American experiment and our ongoing struggle to make real its ideals requires no less audacity from us. To keep democracy alive, we have to reaffirm our commitment to this form of government, and then we have to take risks. We must risk being ourselves, as Esther finally did. We must risk losing our power and position, as so many reformers like Parker and Havel did. We must risk faith and hope, as Abraham Lincoln enjoined us to do in our reading this morning. We must risk telling the truth even when it's hard to hear. Among the truths we must tell are the real and accurate history of this country, its failures and its triumphs. Among the truths we must tell are the real and accurate accounts of right now, the ways we still fall short, and the many things we do so well. Among the truths we must tell is the value and glory and dignity and beauty of every single person, of their right to a voice, a vote, an opinion, their right to self-determination, to justice and mercy and compassion and love. And we have to fight with all we have against anything that would deny any human being equal rights, equal representation, an equal share in this democracy we hold dear. We have to risk standing up, saying what is true, and demanding our place in the long line of people who have pushed forward the ideals of our nation. May we have the courage to act audaciously in pursuit of what this nation may yet be. So may it be.